Hello and welcome to What It Takes, where each week we examine the topics of education, community, health, and opportunity. My guest today, Ryan Anthony Belle, in many ways exemplifies a person who's at the forefront in the region in promoting all four of these within our community. He wears many hats, but as the founder and director of the Black Father Family and the head of school at the Belle Academy in Roanoke, he really is putting his energy where his heart lives, promoting family, education, and community, both in the Black community and beyond. And I'm very much looking forward to our conversation today. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks for having me.
Well, my first question always, because we want to get to know each other, is kind of a biography question. So you've lived in Roanoke for a while, so what's the story? How did you get here?
So my mother is from Roanoke, Virginia. I was actually born in Southern California where my mother and my father met. But around 2000, my mother decided that she wanted to move closer to home. And so she moved us, myself and my two siblings, she moved us to Roanoke, Virginia. I always thought I was going back though. So at that particular point in time, my parents separated. So I thought I was going back. I was actually getting ready to get on the plane to go back, and they pulled me off the plane. My father decided to come here, and all these years later, we still been in Roanoke.
Oh, that's great. And you know, it's funny, Roanoke has a way of pulling you back and getting you here. So you left Roanoke for college, I take it?
Left Roanoke for college, went to Virginia Union University, a historically Black college in Richmond, some of the best times of my life. Then went on to Virginia State University where I got my master's degree. But I lived a short period of time in Richmond, lived some time in York County, Virginia. It's actually where I got my first job in education at Tabb High School in York County. Sure. And then went back to Richmond again. But as you say, Roanoke just pulls you back somehow, some way. It always happens, and so I'm here again.
Okay, great. And you're a product of Roanoke City Schools, and we're glad to have you. So we're going to talk about the Black Father Family Initiative that you founded, but before we get to that, when you were growing up, what kind of messages did you hear about Black fatherhood in general?
So Black fatherhood in general, the messages that I heard as a child were always great messages because they came more so from example, right? So from my father, my uncles, different men in the community, in the church that I grew up in, around the different community events and things that I would be at, the message of Black fatherhood was always a message of men being present, men being active, men being loving, engaged, men holding children accountable, men supporting families, right? And so that's what I always believed to be true. That was the message that I heard until I got a little bit older and got into my working years, right? And sort of came across a different narrative that didn't necessarily match the one that I had seen my whole life, right? And that one was one of more so that Black men were absent, that Black men weren't engaged, that Black men didn't take the responsibility of fatherhood seriously, right? And none of that mirrored or none of that matched what I had seen my whole life.
Right, and I think, you know, we can blame all kinds of things from it. I guess there probably were messages in the media that you saw, and where else did you start hearing that message that you didn't quite, you couldn't put it into your own context?
It was media, of course. I heard it in the media, but what was interesting to me, I was working for the health department at the time, right, on a fatherhood program, and we were doing some great work here in the Roanoke Valley, right, working with dads. And so because of the great work that we were doing, they would ask us to come to these different conferences, state government, federal government, right, and they would have these conferences and ask us to come out and talk to them about the work that we were doing with fathers. And so what really blew me away or what really took me aback is I'm sitting in these conferences and at these seminars with individuals who work within our federal government at the highest of levels, right, who are controlling where dollars are spent on programming and different things of that nature. And that is where I really started to hear the message of how they contextualized a child's experience, how they contextualized a family's experience, how they contextualized the support in the context of a community as a whole around the absenteeism of Black fathers. And again, that was not my reality. That was not my experience. That was not what I had seen all of this time. And so that was really the first moment in time where I said, hey, we got to do something to really expose what's really happening with black men and fathers and how active and engaged they are in the communities and families.
Sure, I'm sure that's not to say that there aren't absent black fathers, as there aren't absent white fathers and everything else, right?
Yeah.
So you decided, well, this is one of the things I really liked as I learned a little bit about you, doing some background work. You decided to take this on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell me what is Black Father Family, this organization, and kind of what, I think we know what the genesis of it, but how did it all get started?
Yeah, so I love to tell people all the time. So that story I just shared with you about going to those different conferences and seminars and different things of that nature really is what got me thinking about, hey, how can we do something differently? How can we expose or celebrate the men who are actively engaged in the lives of their children, right? And so that's really what led us to start the organization Black Father Family. Now, at the beginning of this, it was really just an opportunity for us to say, hey, we want to highlight you for being an active, present, and involved father in the lives of your children. So we would do things on social media. We would have a contest on social media where we would highlight 3 or 4 dads for the week. And then we would give them stuff like prizes, like we would send them beard oil or something like that, right? Little trinkets and stuff like that. And then we started to get phone calls from people who would say, hey, we need mentors. We can't find mentors to be a part of certain programs. I remember an organization here that really struck home with me. The organization, the young men who were involved in their program that year, none of them had any interaction with the juvenile justice system, right? Which was huge. None of the men in the program had any interaction with the juvenile justice system. And there was a young man in the program who was getting ready to be pulled from the program because his mother wanted him to have a black man as his mentor, and the organization couldn't find any black men to mentor the young boy, right? And so they called me and I said, hey, well, I got plenty of black men, right? They're just looking for something to do, right? They're looking for something to do, somebody to pour into their lives. And so that's really what took us to the second iteration of what Black Father Family is, moving from just celebrating the men for being in the lives of their children to now how do we take these men who are fathers, who are uncles, who are coaches, who are grandfathers, who are pastors, who are just mentors in general, and how do we now begin to plug them into the lives of other children, of other families in different spaces within community? What does that look like for us? And then that took us on a third journey of where we are currently today, is how do we now build capacity amongst you as a father, right? It's good to say, hey, you're doing a great job in the lives of your children, but we still have men that say, hey, yes, I'm active and present every day, but I want to be able to take a trip to Disney World, or I want to have a better job, a better career opportunity. I want to advance my education. I want to put my family in a better community, right? How can we help and assist you in doing just that? And so that's the space that we're in now.
So it becomes less about celebrating and more about supporting those who are on the cusp of being the kind of people who can really make a difference in our community, so that then they can help other people as well. Now, I understand that at some point you all became, you got support from the United Way, which for any nonprofit is a huge thing. How did that come about, and what did that mean for you all?
Yeah, so again, a huge thing that we like to teach with Black Father Family is relationships, right? Leaning on your support network. And so that really came about by some relationships that I had here in the community. Abby Hamilton, the president and CEO at the United Way, who has been awesome in support for us, and Dr. Lee Learman, who's the dean of the Virginia Tech Carilion School of Medicine, originally broached the idea to me, Dr. Learman did, about approaching the United Way to maybe serve as a fiscal agent for the organization. And it just made sense. The United Way has a mission to help elevate 10,000 families to self-sustainability. What better way to target families than through the fathers of those families? How do we then begin to grow capacity amongst the fathers so they can then assist their families? And so we had conversations with the United Way. They saw it as a perfect opportunity to really launch an incubator program to help organizations, grassroots community organizations, come underneath the umbrella of the United Way, provide them with some tools and things that they need in order to become self-sustainable organizations, and then watch them flourish. And so it was just a perfect match.
So because there are certainly young people in our community who are growing up without fathers, both black and white, what are some of the things how does that impact a child if they don't have a father and a mother, or they don't have a strong father figure in their life. What have you noticed in your time, like how beyond just the statistics, but how does that impact a developing child?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we as an organization, the Black Father Family, we don't shy away from the fact that there are families, there are children where the fathers aren't actively engaged in the lives of those children, right? What we do try to do is find out the reasons behind that and see how we can wrap some support, wrap some loving arms around that gentleman, around that person, right? To help maybe push them back towards that family, right? Because I do believe that every father wants to be a good father. Now, whether you know how to do it, whether you see the importance in it necessarily, right, may be the question. But I think every man wants to be a great father. And the impact that it has on the children in that family, some of them can be emotionally reserved. Some of them may not necessarily have the confidence that they need in order to handle and solve problems as they move along life, right? We see it, how it affects kids educationally, right? Not only through just the data and the statistics, but I see it every day in the work that I do, right? If you don't have a father who's actively engaged in the lives of those children, sometimes you can see that there's a lack of confidence amongst that child. There's a lack of social and emotional development amongst that child, right? And so, it definitely is something that needs to be addressed, needs to be seen. And we need to figure out how we can find other men to push into and fill those gaps when necessary.
I think educators do that a lot. I know when I was in the classroom, both black and white children, occasionally somebody would slip up and, they would raise their hand or something and they'd say, "Dad."
Yeah.
And that was often a clue for me that maybe there wasn't somebody in their life that was fulfilling that need. And so it fell to all of us, males in the school. And yeah, I've heard that, kids calling their teachers moms as well. And we're going to talk about your school in a little bit, but as we get there, you're involved in an awful lot of projects. We've already talked about several, and we haven't even gotten to the school yet. How do you?
My wife tells me I need to slow down.
Well, that was my question. How do you decide where you're going to put your energy? Because we all only have so much, and you got to be careful with it.
Yeah. So for me, anything that I decide that I'm going to take part in, anything that I determine is valuable or has some merit to it, I always ask myself the question of, if somebody was asked to do this for my children, would I want them to say yes? Right? And so everything I do, I examine it from the standpoint of, is it going to impact children in some way, shape, or form? Is it going to impact family in some way, shape, or form? And is it going to impact community in some way, shape, or form, right? And if those three things are taken care of, if those three boxes are checked and it's in a positive way, then I'll figure out in some way how to carve some time out for it.
So you're a father, correct? And how did becoming a father change your perspective on our whole community?
In so many different ways. So I'm a father, and I became a father 2 different times in 2 different ways, right? Now I have 4 children. I have 1 on the way now, right?
Congratulations.
Thank you. But so I had my first child, so I became a biological father for the first time 10 years ago, right? And I think in that particular moment in time, I still didn't yet realize what it meant. All I knew is that because of my dad, because of my uncles, because of individuals like Reverend Bill Lee, because of individuals like Mr. Fletcher Nichols and Dr. Wayne Harris, right? All of these people, Mr. Peter Lewis, all of these people who had the opportunity to be around in addition to my father, right? All I knew is that I had to be a good dad, or I had to be a present dad. I didn't know what good dad meant yet, right? But I had to be active. I had to be there. I had to make sure that my child felt the presence of their father in their life, right? And so that really shifted my thought process from community, just from the standpoint of, what it takes to be effective, what it takes to make change. You don't need a lot of smarts, right? You just need effort. Anybody who puts forth consistent and constant effort can make a change. And so that's what I strive to do.
That's what I found as a father, right? Sometimes I didn't do it right. There are some moments that I replay in my head where I was not the best father, right? But hopefully, I actually apologized to one of my kids once. I said, look, I didn't handle that very well. I went back later and said, I won't do that again.
Yeah. And that's huge. Apologizing is huge.
And you mentioned all of those people, like Bill Lee, Fletcher Nichols. Those of us who live in Roanoke, especially those of us who've been involved in the schools, E. Wayne Harris, I mean, all of those men, that's a very powerful group of sort of mentors for you.
Right.
So, well, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the Academy, with the Belle Academy. First of all, just tell us what it is and how does it kind of fit with everything else that we've been discussing.
Yeah, so the Belle Academy is a tuition-free private school here in Roanoke, Virginia. And it's actually, the full name of it is the Academy at Belle. And so it's a tuition-free private school servicing students K through 4th grade. And what's really cool about the program and how it sort of fit into everything that I was doing and why I became interested when the position for head of school became open, we have a huge component in family stabilization, right? So the main goal, the school was started by John McLeod and the McLeod family, and it's housed underneath the McLeod Family Foundation. One of the main objectives and goals of the McLeod Family Foundation is to help move families towards self-sustainability, right? They looked at the school as this perfect opportunity. What's the best way to get to the adults, to get to the parents, to get to the caregivers? It's through the kids, right? So they opened up this school in 2018 with a kindergarten class, and now we're servicing K through 4th grade.
You've added a grade every year,
every
is that
year.
Right?
Yep, we've added a grade every year, and now we're at 4th grade. But it's a perfect opportunity for us to get our hands on some families and help them with budgeting, with finance, with home ownership, with transportation, with continuing their education, to help put them in a better position as a family to create a better nucleus around the child.
So it's a private school, but kind of where is it physically located, and how would you describe your student body when the kids arrive?
So the school is located, we're right on the border of Roanoke City and Vinton in the Gusnick King Street area. So and you would miss, if you weren't looking hard enough, you would drive right by it and miss it. We're tucked off back behind the hill. I call it Roanoke's best kept secret, right? And so I would describe our student population. First, let me talk about my staff. The staff there is amazing staff of educators there who are really committed to the work that we're doing. And really committed to the children. I call them scholars, committed to the scholars in the school, right? And then our scholars who are there at the school are a diverse group of kids who come from all areas of the city of Roanoke and who come from all different socioeconomic backgrounds, who come from all different races and ethnicities. Just a really good melting pot of kids who I think come from communities that are lacking in opportunity. And so when they get to us, they thrive for the opportunity that we present them there.
So you describe these wraparound services that you're providing to the whole family. What do parents have to kind of agree to? Because you want people who are ready to be a part of your process.
Right.
When you're having those interviews with families and parents and children, what do you tell these folks? Like, it's not like you guys are going to do all the work, right? You're expecting parents to be involved. What do you expect from the parents?
So the first thing I tell them, and I'm honest with them, is, it's tuition-free private school. So we have this running joke that I tell them all the time: you're not going to give me a headache for free education, right? That's what we're not going to do here. But we also have the opportunity to tell them, hey, they have volunteer hours that they have to commit to, right? So they have to come over to the school and commit to volunteering. We had one parent who just finished out her volunteer hours by doing yoga with our kids, right? And so that's one of the stipulations that they have in order to be there. And then we do have our finance and budgeting component of what we do, right? So they have to attend budgeting classes, right? They have to not only attend the budgeting classes, but they have a certain amount of time that we work with them through this actually drafting a budget, right? We have certain financial literacy classes that they have to complete, where we would also offer them financial incentives and different things of that nature for completing those classes. And then just like you would in any other school space, be open, be honest, be in communication with your teacher, as we're going to be in communication with you, right? Show up to parent-teacher conferences, just different things of that nature. So nothing any more, any less than you would in any other place. We just want parents who are active, engaged, and doing their best, whatever their best is in the capacity in which they are at that moment.
So it's, your families aren't paying a tuition. The funding's coming from the McLeod Foundation, which has done excellent work quietly for a long time, in the area. Do you feel like that? I mean, you've got these kids involved in this very specialized program. Is that commitment, or do you feel confident that that commitment is there from the foundation, and are you having to find funding from other places?
So we do seek outside funding outside of the McLeod family and the McLeod Family Foundation, but 100%, do believe that the McLeods are committed to seeing this continue, right? The McLeod Family Foundation has actually been around since 1992, and John and Mrs. McLeod have actually been involved in this type of work long before that, right? And so history would lead us to believe that they are committed to this. All my conversations with them let me know that they are committed to seeing this continue throughout the future and continuing to help families in Roanoke.
And from what I'm hearing, I'm sure they're very happy with the way things are going, I'm sure.
I hope so.
And I know you have a relationship with a child care provider, right? Honeytree, and
Yep.
Tell me what that's all about, and how does that work with the schooling?
So Honeytree Early Learning Centers are actually an entity underneath the McLeod Enterprise umbrella.
Okay.
Right. So the McLeod Enterprise umbrella has three separate components. They have their real estate side of what they do. They have the Honeytree Early Learning Centers, and then they have the McLeod Family Foundation. So the Honeytree Early Learning Centers is our daycare component. So one of the things that we try to do with the families is, again, moving them towards self-sustainability. How can we make your financial life easier? And so through the Honeytree Early Learning Centers partnering with the Academy, we are able to eliminate the cost of childcare.
Wow.
So the families can come. We have scholars with us anywhere from 7 in the morning until 5:30 in the evening.
As someone who has worked in public schools off and on throughout my career, I'm just thinking, like, wouldn't it be great if everybody
Right.
had this opportunity, and if every school could serve their families the way that
Right.
that yours does? What are your thoughts on that in terms of, do you consider the Academy to be, kind of a laboratory for what might work in other settings?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a friend of mine who I talk to quite frequently about it. I think the Academy is slowly developing a blueprint for a true community school, right? What does it look to provide all the different types of wraparound services that you could provide for families and for young people? What does it look like to use community partners to create champions for these young people? And however those community partners can do it, nothing's too small. We just were able to participate in the coat drive that Xavier Duckett and Humble Hustle takes part in every year, right? So something as simple as providing coats to children for the wintertime, all the way to a commitment such as the Honeytree Early Learning Centers to provide child care to all of the kids, right? I think that this really is a blueprint for what a community school could look like.
Some might hear about what you're doing and think, well, that's great in its small way, but do we really expect, let's say we did expand this out and it was available to every child in our area. Do we really expect schools to be responsible for all of this, and at what cost? And are we really going to spend our resources this way? But when you think about it, what does it mean for these children and for our community, the city of Roanoke, the county, the whole region, that these kids are getting this experience? What do you expect of your scholars as they graduate from your program?
So I tell my scholars all the time, what I expect from them is to turn around and pay it forward, right? And by paying it forward, what I mean is to do their best, to not waste the opportunity, right? To ensure that everything that we're putting in front of them, that they at least try their best to take full advantage of what's going on and put their best foot forward, right? And that's what we aim to do there, right? I have this saying where, to me, the experience is just as important as the education. So we have to provide them the right experiences, put them in front of the right people, the right opportunities to mirror the education, to make it real for them in their lives.
We're down to just under a couple minutes left. And this is a big question that I've asked of other people and done whole shows about it, but I just don't want you to leave without me asking you this, but a relatively short answer. One of the biggest concerns in our community is violence, and gun violence in particular. How do you think what you're doing might be a part of the solution?
I think what we're doing through Black Father Family and through the Academy at Belle can assist in the solution around violence, because we are offering men, we are offering families, and we are offering communities and young people a trusted voice to listen to them, to share with them, to provide a safe space for them, somewhere where they can come and let out some of that emotions that they may be feeling in a positive and healthy way.
Well, I think we could talk for a much longer time, but this is a 26-minute program. So as we close the show, I would just like to thank my guest, Ryan Anthony Belle, for spending his time with me today. For What It Takes, I'm Tom Landon.